It just keeps getting better and better and better. Can you feel it? Wow. I know it's only going to get better as we move forward, because right now I get to bring up one of our favorites. A wonderful, I want to call him our teddy bear guy. I don't know why. Maybe because he's cuddly. Maybe because his wife is so sweet. I don't know what it is. But I do know that he's one of our wonderful members of our community and has been here through thick and thin with us. So please, let's welcome up our beloved Dennis. Dennis Alstrand.
You never know when you need one of these. When Lucinda was talking about forgiveness, I knew you'd forgive me if I had to get up and walk to the bathroom. I can't make it. I could not make it. I want to start off my talk today by thanking you, Rev Bev. You shepherded me through these 49er playoff games. Never once scheduling me on a day that they're going to be in the playoffs. That's huge to me. And by the way, I'm wearing the new 49er colors. Lisa was asking me, why aren't you wearing them? This is the 49er colors. All right. 49ers, got to throw them out. Speaking of Super Bowl Sunday, there's been a real controversy going on amongst the referees in the National Football League that I want to talk about. It was first noticed that they would always check their voicemail, the referees, at the end of a game. And no one really knew why. And then it became worse. They started checking their voicemail as they're running off the field. And it got so bad, there was a referee that checked his voicemail even when he was still on the field. And they grabbed him, they said, "What are you guys doing this for?" He goes, "Okay, I'll tell you. I'll tell you." Just once at the end of a game, I wanted to hear the words, "No missed calls." Oh, that's for football fans. I got this in case you get out of hand. Football is like ballet. It's extremely choreographed if you're on the offense, if you have the ball. Everyone knows exactly where they have to be at every second at the start of a play. It's like ballet in a way, except for in ballet you don't have a 250-pound linebacker blindsiding you. With that difference, it's an incredible game in that way, and they really are timed to the second, and there's second drop downs and thirds. Okay, if he's not here, I'm going to go over to here, that kind of thing. It's also interesting in its own way in that in football there's a lot of little miracles that happen that come from behind when it looked like it was no chance. You know, the tipped ball from one guy's hands into someone else's hands and run for a touchdown. It's a little short miracles, but it's also envisioning to the highest degree. I think every professional athlete, don't you think, once they get to a higher level, they envision what they're going to do before they do it. And in fact, the 1988 NFL or Super Bowl MVP, Jerry Rice, tells a story about how before that game, the night before the game, he spent the whole night awake thinking about every play he was going to be in, how the ball was going to be snapped, what number would be snapped on, where he would be at every pass and throw. And so he spent the night doing that. And on the day of Super Bowl Sunday, he came into the locker room and just laid down and fell asleep. Everyone's going, "Jerry, how can you sleep on a day like this?" He goes, "I already played the game last night." I mentioned little passing miracles. One of the things, this is the big thing I want to talk about today, is not football. I want to talk about a long-running miracle that's been going on for almost 20 years now, and that is this building that you're sitting in. This building, if you ever wanted to know, to have proof that science of mind thinking works, just look at this building, look at everything in it. Because this story is pretty incredible. It ranges through 4 ministers, all 4 that the Center for Spiritual Living in East Hawaii has ever had, starting with Reverend Angelica, who's out there today. Hi, Reverend. She says just call her Angelica, but I still have to use it. Followed up by Reverend Tagg, who passed some years ago. Followed up by Reverend Kathy. And followed in equal amounts by our beloved Reverend Bev. And to you too. In 1985, Reverend Angelica started off the Center for Spiritual Love in East Hawaii, and I'm just going to go through the places that we met at. It started off at her place, Angelica's living room. Then it moved upstairs at Waikea Villa in Hilo. And then it went to a Buddhist boys club in Hilo. Then to the HPP Hui around 2005, and that's when Sandy and I started coming. To a church down, I think, on 14th Street. Does anyone remember that place, 14th? It was beautiful. It was a beautiful church. Then to the KL Senior Center, and then to this building. And in every place that we're at, we were paying rent that we just did not necessarily have. So we had to magically raise money all the time. Reverend Angelica had a plan, an idea. She had actually everyone that was around then, I think, was involved in this idea that we stop paying rent, that we build a place. Her idea was like those movies where the community gets together and they start raising walls for a new person. They build a house together. That was her plan, like those movies. I wasn't there when this whole thing started out back around 2004 or so, but I'm sure there were naysayers. We didn't have money. We didn't have extra money to build something like this. How did it come about, or how would it come about? The word was put out. Reverend Angelica said, okay, I'm putting the word out. We need to raise money to buy property. She wanted to buy this property right here, which included the little red house at the time, which was being run by Malama Lama School. She put the word out, and then she got on the phone and started calling banks to get loans. They're going, nah, we're not going to loan you money. You don't have anything to collateral. What are you going to do? She was on the phone with a bank in Honolulu when a guy walked in, and he goes, hang up that phone. I hear you need money to buy this land. Wrote a check. Put it out there. She put it out there. The money came. This is Science of Mind 101. So the land was bought. So it's one lot, including the red house to here. And I remember this being pretty just junky around here on this side when you drive by. And they're talking, they're going to build this building here. Back in those days, Tagg started drawing up plans, Reverend Tagg, to have the building look like the HPP Hui. That one with but it's got those doors, those chain link doors. And the idea came, I think, from Bonnie Masterjohn to no doors. Let's make this all open air. Beautiful idea. I think it's a wonderful idea. It was around this time that Reverend Angelica left for other pastures. She moved up to Canada. And so I say thank you, Reverend Angelica, for getting this whole thing started, getting the dream started and making it come alive. Thank you, Reverend Angelica. When she took over, Reverend Tagg became our minister. And like I said, he was drawing up plans for this place. He was one of the chief builders and was now, at this point, the spiritual guide of the faith of this building. Tagg knew how to get business deals, and he did that. He went out and got deals. But this whole church was built on love and faith. Everyone felt like they belonged. They took pride and they took ownership. I'm mentioning only the ministers now because it would be scary for me to start trying to get into the names of people who really did all the work. I started thinking like Susan did and Fran did, and there's so many people involved. I'm going to start pissing people off because I'm not mentioning their names, so I'm just going to kind of stop right there, other than one name I'll mention in a minute. But everyone felt like they belonged. There was lots of help in the office. There's donation, trades, and loans. By the way, I do want to mention some names. These are people that I talked to in order to put this talk together today. 3 of the 4 reverends, and I couldn't quite get to Reverend Tagg. He's not answering the phone. He passed away about 10 years ago, by the way. But I did talk to the 3 of the 4 reverends, and I got their input. I talked to Susan Hicks. I talked to Bonnie Masterjohn. I talked to a lot of people because I really wanted to see if I can encompass the story of this building. All of them talked about what a miracle this place is. There was no committees. Someone would say, we need this. They would come. Build it, it'll come. The foundation was needed. The money came for the foundation. The workers were here. The deal was made with the company that actually put it in. Reverend Tagg. People ask me about him. He was a beloved man. He was a great leader, but he sucked at paperwork. As Reverend Bev found out, and Reverend Kathy found out later, he was a man who moved easily, and he really enveloped science of mind in his thinking. He created a car that he got. He was a real Grateful Dead fan. He's a total Deadhead, inside and out. And when they were going to play, the Grateful Dead came back together, and they were going to play in San Francisco. He got tickets. He got plane fare, and he went and watched the Grateful Dead's last show. Paperwork may not have been his strong suit, but he was very good at visualizing. He realized that he needed some assistance from someone who was a little bit different than him, someone who could put together those sides of things that he wasn't necessarily good at. And so he started putting it out there. He wanted a miracle. An assistant came along who was a miracle, and she became our Reverend Kathy, right back there. So she became his assistant, and there's a word that I can never remember what it is, where you become an actual reverend, an actual minister. The ordination, I keep getting the word wrong, but the ordination, I remember we performed at that. So Reverend Kathy's in place. Reverend Tagg is doing all the building, or a lot of the building, with other people. There were huge fundraisers, such as the Lilikoi Festival that Sandy put together, and we did a few of those. That's the last name I'm going to mention other than ministers, I think. I forgot everyone else's name anyway. We had the walls up. There was a $9,000 grant from the Heffernan Foundation that Kathy wrote. We got the roof on. I wasn't involved in a lot of these work committees because they're always on Saturday, and that's my Special Olympics day, and that's like my priority. But I remember being involved in one day, and I thought I was working real hard till I saw the photos of the day, and me and Kathy's son Marcus are outside talking like the Godfather to each other. So I don't take a lot of credit for the building of this, but I do remember that the beams were purple. And everyone was so proud about that. It was you? The hand up back there? Ah. There was some sort of fruit or plant that they used to give a purple base. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for all the help back there. Thanks. It was incredible. It looked incredible when you walked in. Look at purple beams, man. It's like purple haze. But we were still meeting in K.O., and we were still paying rent to the K.O. Senior Center. No good. We can't move in yet because it's not permitted. We got to step up the progress to get this thing done. The roof was done through amazing hard work. Momentum was going. Reverend Tagg died. This was a sad moment for us. Incredible. The word sad doesn't cover it. But Reverend Kathy was in place. Reverend Kathy took over, and it was seamless. And I've said this many times through the years, it didn't have to be seamless. If Reverend Kathy wasn't here, I'm not sure what we would have done. Someone would have come. It would have been a miracle, and someone would have come, but she turned out to be that miracle. She wasn't sure she wanted me to talk about this, but I'm going to. Reverend Kathy was not exactly in the best of health when she took over. I did not know that. She was in declining health. Her husband had died. I didn't know that. A year before, she was trying to mourn him, and she took over this congregation and just kept it rolling. It did work out. The world could have fallen apart, but she marshaled the troops. After Tagg passed, the Centers for Spiritual Living, our umbrella corporation, is that what you call it? Yeah. They gave a lot of money to us as well. It just kept happening. The dream, the treating, the prayers, all kept working. Reverend Kathy offered financial support, and during those big work days, she would show up with food. Susan tells me that they were working like 2 or 3 days a week as well, you and a group of other people. People just kept making this thing happen. I got to tell you something on the sly. Don't tell anybody else this, other than yourselves and everyone watching. And We were meeting here illegally. We moved here. It wasn't permitted yet. There's no shock on people's faces. We were rascals, man. We just moved right in. Right around the time that COVID hit. And so we had to develop, I think Reverend Kathy did a lot of this, developed a lot of the procedures. There was going to only be 9 people here in the building at the same time. And that was why we developed an AV team. Before it was just us right here. We developed an audiovisual team, and it's the one that's working today where you can watch our sermons, whatever you call them, on TV later. Kathy asked for help. She was asking for us on the board for our help for quite a while. For myself, I don't think I took it seriously enough. I think I was in denial that she really needed someone to come in and replace her. And she would tell us almost every meeting, look at guys, treat for this. Treat for someone to come. I need someone to come that is going to be energetic. We need someone to come in that's going to be a whirlwind of energy. We need someone to come to take this place over and take it out of my hands and let me rest for a minute. And guess who showed up? We treated for you, and you came. Thank you, Rev Bev. Thank you. But before we get away from you, Reverend Kathy, thank you. You marshaled the troops. You put us together. You made this thing happen. All 4 ministers God sends, everyone I think in equal ways, but thank you all so much, all 4 of you. After TAG passed, and this is as far as I'm going to say about this, there was a dark conflict. That's how I'm going to put it. There was a dark conflict that Reverend Kathy and her team here were unable to resolve. Let me put it that way. Along with that, we were having a hard time getting an electrical permit. We finally got electricity came in. I remember the guy backed out. Someone else came in. We needed electricity here, but finally we did get a permit with that. And then finally, and I remember this being a huge day of celebration, this place got permitted. Yeah. Reverend Bev came through Mark Johnson, Reverend Mark Johnson, and she came to us. We treated for her, and it came. She came, not it. She came. She has done equal amounts here. If you look down at the floor that your feet are resting on right now, this floor did not look like this when you took over. This floor kind of was in bad shape. I think it's beautiful right now. I love this floor. And what's that? It's a good floor. We're keeping it just like it is. The doors were built, though there were not doors there at this time. Joaquin built these doors. Oh, I added another name, right? Those things, if you've ever worked to those doors, they just slide easily, man. Those doors are cool. She found missing receipts. She took I don't know how many hours she took on this, to go through this almost duffel bag of receipts from earlier days to help figure out the financial mess of building this building. She put it together. I give her credit for this. She ended that dark conflict I'm talking about. It was a huge moment in the history of the building of this building. Speaking of ministers, let's go to. Thank you. Basically what this says here, if you can't read it out there, it's a pastoral search committee. And one guy's telling the other guy, basically we're looking for an innovative pastor with a fresh vision who will inspire our church and to remain exactly the same as it was before. Every minister of every church in the land that's ever of any country in any century who took over from a popular minister from before hears this same thing. And I got to thinking about it, and we're going to take a little side trip away from the building and into our ministers for a minute here. I got to thinking about it, and I made a list of things that our reverends do, our ministers do, that maybe we don't all know about. Maybe we know about a lot of them, maybe we do. That's the biggest one. But they are also our spiritual leaders. And by the way, I got input from all three living pastors, ministers on this thing. They're our spiritual leaders, teachers, therapists. They write and deliver their talks almost weekly. The amount of time it took me to get this talk together, I can't imagine doing this weekly. You know, there's a lot of time, so you do that. God sends to the community, they're 24/7 bereavement counselors. They get the calls in the middle of the night that someone's in the hospital. They gladly take the call. That's part of their job. They listen to it. They listen to our long-winded stories. They listen to our short-winded stories. They listen to our stories of medium wind. A lot of the stories are about woe and being a victim that I am. Oh, my poor self. And when they're successful, they talk us out of those stories. The whole idea is change your thinking, change your life. It's that easy, but it's probably pretty hard for a lot of us. They're a big part of the leadership council, and they're actually leaders for that council. They ensure our actions follow our mission statement. They create and enact a budget every year. She showed me our budget when I was on the board, and I was like, yeah, it looks good to me. I'd have been the tag if I was a minister. They look after the finances, they look after the building, they look after the maintenance, and they look after all of us, don't they? They're constantly learning and constantly loving. They lead fundraising activities. Every time I think about when we're asking for funds up here, and I think about other organizations I'm in where we're asking for funds, it reminds me, just help out when things are being asked for. That's going to be my mantra. You guys want to hear about the stained glass behind me? Yeah. A few weeks ago, Gary Turner gave a great talk. I was very glad to be here that day, and he was talking about the cathedrals of Europe, how beautiful the stained glass is in those. That's a different style of stained glass than we use here. I'm going to try some French here. This style of stained glass is called dalle de verre. Can you say that? No. Thank you. That's French for slab of glass is what it is. They're just better at saying this. Dalle de verre is the original form of stained glass. It was used before all the cathedrals of the medieval cathedrals. Cut with a saw, laid in a bed, a wooden bed, each piece that's open here. The material is poured into the frame between the glass pieces and it's set to dry. Stephen Jockier, who has such a big part in this, is listening right now. Is probably saying, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, son. I'm going to read a lot of this next part because I talked to him for a long time and exchanged emails. Material poured into the frame between the glass pieces and dry. Glass faces are cleaned. The panel is relocated into what was then just cut holes where you could see out into the property. And as the pieces were put in, there was a big blue tarp over this whole thing that had a drawing of this. You remember that, anybody? I'd forgotten it until Reverend Catherine reminded me of that. There was a drawing of that. The use of the thicker glass here produces deeper colors. Glass faces are illuminated by bright natural light. Stephen had asked his Hanai son, see if I get this right, to design something for that circular stained glass behind you there. And I remember Stephen came in one day and he goes, look at this drawing I have here. It was just on this piece of paper. This was on a piece of paper. And I was going, look at those planets. And Stephen says, yeah, well, they might be planets or they might be atomic particles. It's all how you look at it, right? His son, instead of drawing that, drew this. And it became a 6-year project. 6 years of hard work for a whole lot of people. You'll notice, though, and I've noticed this because a lot of times when people are talking, I'll sit there looking at that window, you know, the glass, that everything looks real as if these are all perfectly aligned, even though they're in whole separate sections, and some very far apart. How do you get something like that? To get the exact calculations of the black metal on the outside of the planets, or atomic particles, calculus was required. He lost me right there. The structural elements, stanchions and mullions, are welded steel. The steel had to be rolled to exact curvatures in order to flow from one window to the next to keep the image perfect. Calculus was the only way to transfer those curves into a laser cutter and steel roller. Almost all of the pieces are faceted. You can see even from your chair that a lot of the pieces have these engravings on them that sometimes look like clamshells. That was done with this particular carbide tipped hammer, right, Stephen? Yep. This is an interesting thing that Stephen pointed out, but I hadn't really noticed until he did. The glass looks alive, and the reason is because of those clam-shaped things. A lot of lines going out as the earth turns and the sun rises. Every second, the wall changes. You can't really see it in that way, but it is. That's why when you take a picture of it, it just doesn't look the same. It looks flat. But it's because it's changing right now, even as I'm talking. The lightness and the darkness creates the illusion of depth. That green planet over there, as you can see, it starts off very light and ends up dark. Even from where I'm standing right now, it looks like it sticks out about 6 inches from the wall in a globular shape. Yeah. And let's get to what I call the red planet. Let me talk about that one for a minute, because our eyes perceive things in very precise ways if things are exactly red, blue, or green. So we have red, blue, and green cones on the back of our eyes. Light reflects off something, goes in our eyes, and our brain goes blue. Green, that's red over there. That color right there, our brain's got to make it up. There is no magenta, as you may see it, in our cones. I think that if we were to be able to look to each other's eyes, that we would see red, green, and blue pretty much the same as everyone else. But I think looking at that, if I was to look at that, what I see as red circle through your eyes, I think it would be completely different than what you see. An interesting aspect about this, I noticed at the concert last Saturday night, it was front lit. This whole building was lit. There was no light coming in from the outside, and that was black. Some people thought it was gray. It was black. I went around to the outside, and since it was backlit coming from the inside out, I could see the red. It's running. So this thing only works when it's front lit. I mean, excuse me, when it's backlit. I got it backwards. This particular piece of glass was a gift to Stephen from his teacher, and it's special. It hasn't been made for over 70 years. All right. From the conception to the finish of the windows was about 6 years. One last thing I want to get into here is there's some plants. There's a tea plant and a ginger plant right down in front of this podium. They have been around since the beginning of time. No, since the beginning of this center. And they have been planted everywhere where we can plant plants, not at the KL Senior Center, but they're here. After this service today, Stephen is going to take these two plants that were entrusted to Lesta and Stephen and plant them here. So this circle will just keep going. Man, there's so many people I talked to and so much information I got. I hope you enjoyed this walk back through our building here. So many people have passed that were involved with this, Rev Tag, John Spate, and so many others. I'm going to start forgetting names, so I'm going to stop right there. But there's a lot of people that passed, and a lot of people have come and left. That it's almost as if this thing was started off and then it's passed on to the next group of people, and then it's passed on, and it's still going. This thing is not done. It's going to just keep getting more beautiful. As Bonnie Massajon says, this place is truly the eighth wonder of the world. Thank you, everybody.